That courthouse.
It's just better. So, was Gora Purnima is just next week. I will be upstate New York. I have a place, and we'll have a very special Gora Purnima. At one devotee's house, and Satsrup Maharaj will come, and Rabindra Swarup will come. My neighbors. Satsrup Maharaj lives right across the street from me. Rabindra Swarup lives next to me.
Well, where in upstate?
What?
Where in upstate?
Called Stuyvesant Falls. It's near Hudson. It's a devotee community. There's a lot of nice people up there. And at the house of Krishna Kumari, Kishori just sent me an old video. I'll have to put it on Facebook of Harinam Kirtan about 24 years ago. I can't even believe those people are that old. But there was so many people. Stubir Guru Maharaj was leading the Kirtan with Sridhar Maharaj. And you see everyone there. You name it, practically they're there. Mahamuni, Vraj Kishore, Henry, you know, everyone's there. The Guru Maharaj is leading Kirtan, Subal, Krishna Kumari, Seva Priya, Prem Bhakti Marg. Sometimes people don't know the roots of the Krishna consciousness movement. And you just see all those people together. I mean, Radhika Raman, yeah, he'll laugh. No one else will laugh, but incredible people. Govinda, it's just so many, one face after another. Premarnava, just so many people leading Kirtan, going through Washington Square Park. What?
Second Avenue, in front of Second
And
Avenue.
then ending at Second Avenue. So I'm going to read from the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das Thakur. And in Gaur Lila, the pastimes of Chaitanya, Gaur Lila is Krishna Lila. It's the same, except the form is different. Just like we're persons, and we have different forms in different moods, even different colors. We could be red with rage, we can have the blues, we can be pale with fright, practically every color. You know, yellow with cowardice, green with envy. It's just, so mood affects form. So there's no difference between Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's just the mood is changed, and therefore the form is changed. So the same thing is there in Gaur Lila as is in Krishna Lila. Just the form is there. And the form in Gaur Lila is more accessible. Just like there's one place, we were just in Sri Mayapur. Indira, we were there, we had a group there, I don't know how many years ago that was there, but going to the Srivas Angam, the place where the Sankirtan mission began. And it's said that it's Rasa Stali in Gaur Lila. So Rasa Stali is where Krishna had the Rasa dance. And so that's Krishna and dancing with the gopis. There's music, and there's song, there's dance. Krishna is dancing, and Krishna looks at the moon. He puts his hands like this to the moon, and then he puts the hands towards Radha's face. Your face is like the moon. And then he puts his hands to his heart. My heart is at your feet. And there's dancing and there's music. Again, we were just talking before that environment affects consciousness. And one of the things that affects consciousness the most is sound. Sound is the most powerful object of the senses. That's why when we want to wake up in the morning, it's by sound. We don't have like an automatic thing that flicks on the television or something like that. It's by sound. So sound is very, very powerful to affect the consciousness. You know, I came from Moscow yesterday, so I'm just seeing how the mind doesn't work. Because I had the most brilliant flow and the most brilliant points coming out. Like, what happened? Where did it go? It'll come back though. So, yeah, there's music. Music is the most powerful thing to change the consciousness. The 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it explains how everything is in the modes of nature. There's strands of matter, 3 basic strands of matter, just like there's 3 primary colors. You mix them, you can make unlimited colors. So there's 3 strands of matter: goodness, passion, and ignorance. They're mixed together in different ways. And they conduct different types of consciousness. And everything subtle and gross is in those modes. So I was describing like you have the external affects the internal. According to your mind, you create your environment. According to your environment, it affects your mind. Therefore, cleanliness is the object of sight in goodness. So if things are clean, if let's say this is goodness and this is your environment, this is your mind, and your mind may be in ignorance or passion, it will help to move the mind to a higher level of perception and contentment, which are the symptoms of goodness. Symptoms of goodness is a higher perception and a higher feeling of satisfaction. So music and sound is so important. In fact, I remember maybe it was 30 years ago, they realized that they needed to increase the public's desire for public transportation into New York, but there was a problem that the Port Authority, gotta be, I'm like on the edge of my seat, I'm gonna say something politically. I would call them bums. You know, that's the language when I grew up. I was afraid there might be a family of bums here. I'll have to like renounce my position or something. But there's, anyway, there were these bums in the Port Authority. And they kept on, the police kept on pulling him in, and they kept on going out, and they kept on pulling him in, and they kept on, you know, they're pulling him out, they kept on going in. And then somebody had an idea that let's put on classical music. You know, and let's see what happens. You know? Dun, 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 dun. And they put on this very soft music, and they left. Because their mind, in a particular mode of ignorance, wanted an environment like that, because that becomes your taste. So they changed the environment. They didn't want to stay, so it has such a powerful effect. Even there was one emperor in China, and he was ruling the country, and you know, good policing is. Did I say something wrong? You know, good policing There is such a thing. Good policing puts the police in particular areas where there's the most crime. So where to put everyone? Where to divide up? He sent his spies to go to different places in the country and listen to the music that they liked. Because the music they liked would determine whether they defined it, what mode they were in. And a lower mode of nature is more inclined to irreligious type activities. So there's such a relationship with that. Now I'm going to go from there back to the Rasa Leela. I don't know. It's so we'll get back to Gaur Leela here. So the Rasa Leela is what? It's externally, it's boy and girl with dance and music and song to enhance the feelings of love. But what love? Twasmin Parama Prema Rup, the highest form of love, which is to God. And the more absorbed you are in the object of your adoration, the more intense you will feel that love. That's actually the secret of bhakti. That's how bhakti works. When you're focused on the object of your adoration, which is Krishna in the form of the name, then you feel your heart more. I'm writing, people here know I write Monday morning greetings, and I was just writing one called something about how chanting works. Chant and be happy, how does it work? How does chanting actually make us happy, and why doesn't it sometimes? That was the question. So the basic principle is what is happiness? What is the principle of happiness? Principle of happiness is love. We know that from even the Chaitanya Charitamrita describes God has a pleasure potency, Ladini Shakti. And what's the essence of that potency? It's Krishna praying, it's love. And the pleasure potency becomes reflected in Brahman as Brahmananda, in personal feeling of happiness, and it becomes reflected as material pleasure in this world. But, so how does that happiness work? What is that happiness? And that happiness is an energy. And what energy is it? It's an energy between two people who have relationship. There's an energy between people, and that's what pleasure is. It's love. And we have that relationship with God, which is the highest love. So when we are focused on God, we feel ourselves, just as a young child is born. I see here there's some mothers and children, right? They look at each other, right? Kunapurna, raise your hand there. Kaylee, look at your mother. See, there's Priya and Kishori Radha. And back there, Mangalarti is there. Look at your mother there. So much more. There's an energy. There's an energy. It's natural. It's not conceptual or intellectual. It's an existential principle. So when there's focus on the object of your relationship, it gives a particular energy called love. And the highest love is to God, because God is an eternal object of adoration. So how does Krishna consciousness work? When you focus on that object, then you feel it. So the more absorbed you are in that object, the more you will feel it. I thought of, I love analogies, and I love when I think of an original analogy. This is an original analogy, I've never heard it before. How it works, because it's not just focus, but focus has to be yatna. In the Yoga Sutras, yatna means with effort. What the effort is the practice is concentration. And when concentration is prolonged, when it's without interruption and in the right mood, it has the effect. And the same thing with chanting. That's why kirtan is so great, because it increases the absorption. This is Satya Hari, my good friend, wrote the best article I've ever read on kirtan in the Journal of Vaishnava Studies. It's really a seminal work on how kirtan works. And he's describing in that from the Sikh tradition, and that there's rag and tal in the rag and tal, rhythm and melody have intricate connections with the psyche to invoke emotions. So when your objective or your initial emotion is devotion, and you put it in rag and tal, it enhances the absorption in the emotion. And you can become very absorbed. A nice point that's made in the article, it's not his point, it's from studying the traditions in the Sikh tradition of kirtan and music, then what happens in good kirtan, not the volume of the music, but the absorption in the music actually recedes in the background, and the mantra becomes prominent in good kirtan. It's facilitating it, but what's facilitating is the absorption. So how kirtan works, how chanting works, is when you have that absorption. The Yoga Sutra says 4 things: concentration, without interruption, over a period of time, and in the right mood. And there's a certain absorption. And then you begin to feel it. So there has to be some concentration. It doesn't have to be intellectual concentration. It can be emotional concentration. But how it works. So the analogy I thought, and analogies are really good, because sometimes we filter things through our own understanding. We don't really understand something until we see it in the world. We actually see an example of it in the world, and then it relates to us. But I think the example is, when we were young, the scientific experiment we did, and Kaylee, thank God I'm still not in high school. One of my goals in life is not to take birth again, so I have to go to PS 200 in Bensonhurst, and then go through the competition for sense gratification, and then joining the Hare Krishna movement in ignorance of what that means when you get purified. So we used to do a scientific experiment. You put a piece of paper, and then you have a magnifying glass that intensifies the light, and then the paper becomes fire, but it doesn't become immediately. You have to kind of deviously hold it and get it to burn, and then it comes to fire. So it's like that with mantra, by concentration and perception. Perception is not, so it's not just enough to hear the mantra, you have to focus your consciousness on it. Because perception doesn't happen without the mind. Perception is not the senses alone. I can say how many times you're chanting your rounds or chanting, but you don't hear it because your mind is someplace else. Is that actually hearing? There's some hearing, but it's not the full effect of hearing. When you're concentrated, or you're hearing a class, and if the speaker is not like an entertainer, or you're not philosophically inclined, then you could hear it, your mind's someplace else. So when there's focus, then you actually, it kind of inflames the consciousness. You actually feel the holy name. That's how kirtan works. Perception is dependent on attention. It's also dependent on your attitude. Like we're envious of someone, we see them as less, which means we don't actually see them. So when your attention is there and your attitude is there, and you focus, and just some realizations, and then I may or may not get to the Chaitanya Bhagavat, but is I don't know why, but I was just in Vrindavan, and we'd have so many groups every other day. Every other day we'd have about 20, 25 people. We had Bobby and Amanda from Prema Yoga, like 25 people, and then Sean Korn from Los Angeles and 25 people, and then this group and 25 people, and the Vaishnavas from Kansas City, Priti Viti Achi Yati Nagaradi Gram in every town and village. And not even Kansas City, Kansas. The Red State Vaishnavas. Everywhere Krishna consciousness goes. And so many groups. And what I'd have this kirtan group come when they come. And the most fantastic kirtan group. And because Vrindavan is the spiritual world, which means no one has a job, and they can come 24 hours a day in bhakti. You can call someone up and they know, I'm at work today. No, you come. So I call the kirtan group. Everybody has their own time, and the kirtan groups come. Whoa, there's this drummer. His name is Partha. He's about 18 or 19. Top 5 in the world. Really. Born in Vrindavan. Oh, so sweet. So sweet. And then the Kinchana Krishna comes. And the kirtans. And the level of absorption. The level of absorption. And then you begin to feel it. This is what Lord Chaitanya gave. And then I went to Moscow. And then in the center of Moscow, there's this one kirtan program, which I'm very, very close with the people, every Wednesday. Center of Moscow, it's the most exclusive neighborhood in Moscow, the most exclusive neighborhood. But there's this really humble Vaishnava and his wife, their little daughter. I don't think she's even 2. She comes to the kirtan with a little guitar. I don't think she's even 2, and she's doing these riffs and chanting, and then turning it over and banging, and it's like amazing, actually. And his family his great-grandfather was the most famous opera singer in Russian history, and the director of the Bolshoi Ballet. His grandfather was the most famous, a very famous author. So this is a house that the Tsar gave his great-grandfather. So they don't have money, but they have this house, so it still has a toilet in one room, and it's not like a modern bed, but it's like a museum, and they opened it up to kirtan. Great kirtan. You sit there. And I go, they're very close with me, and I go and I listen to the kirtan. The kirtan is just so absorbing. And then I come here to Brooklyn, my people. I remember when the World Trade Tower came down, I happened to be in Manhattan at what was the seed of the Bhakti Center, East 4th Street, Yagya Purush, Gadadhar Pandit, Ganesham. So I was staying there, and I was actually the only person there. I think people were getting angry when the World Trade Towers came down. And somehow I got the call to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was very, very practical. And somehow, I think we're talking afterwards, I said, Maharaj, he said, what would you do if you were there? And I think he asked him, what would you do there? Oh yeah, we do kirtan, we distribute books. Someone told me, he said, no. He said, I go and buy water. He said, I go and buy water. I'd be down there, he said, helping my people. Because he was from Manhattan. So I'd be helping my people. So, now the kirtan here, and I noticed something, and I'm kind of happy about this place. I remember when I was getting the videos, Rati was getting it, and it seems like, wow, look at it. It's almost made for this. You got the basic kirtan ball, and you got a little enclave in case a few men want to take the job of the ball. you gotta have the outlets, but so I was watching, and during the kirtan I saw, wow, what a level of absorption the people have in the kirtan. What a level of absorption. So I thought, the thing about home programs is there's something about intimacy of group and openness of heart. And it's actually a principle. It's actually a principle of kirtan, because in Srivas Angam, we are proud, we have our kirtan melas, and this kirtan mela, and 24-hour kirtan mela. But Lord Chaitanya, 12 hours a night, with the greatest kirtan singers in the world. I mean, the four greatest kirtan singers at that time, Sarup Damodar, Lord Chaitanya's most intimate associate, Srivas Thakur, Mukunda, and Govinda Ghosh. These were the greatest kirtaniers, and they would come there in the evening, and they would have kirtan. They would have kirtan together, very, very intimately. And there's a principle of rasa, and rasa means emotion that's intensified and overwhelming. And our goal is bhakti rasa. That is the spiritual world. The spiritual world is consciousness where devotion becomes intensified and overwhelming. Like, for example, tragedy. Sometimes we have tragedy, and that's all you can think about is the person that you lost. And then there's romance, and all you can think about is the person you love. And then there's chivalry, and all you can think about is the country you love and the enemies you hate. And then there's different types of these overwhelming emotions. So Rupa Goswami explained to us that really, and this is what the Bhagavatam is about this bhakti rasa. emotion that heightens to the highest degree and consumes one and overwhelms one with devotion. This bhakti rasa. But one of the principles of that is that it happens in community. That is unified in experience in such a way where they create a singular mind, not a singular soul, but a singular mind in a way where they can easily shed the limited concept of I or ego, which prevents one from fully experiencing love. So in those kirtans, that's this theory of ras, is everyone when they're on the same page. Hey. Okay. When everyone is on the same page, then what happens is you can open your heart to the maximum degree. And that's why Jiva Goswami says in Bhakti Sandarbha that Sankirtan is better than Kirtan because it gives special feelings of bliss. And Sankirtan means with others. Special feelings of bliss because it gives a special facility to release yourself from the egotistical central position that blocks love. That's why Kirtan is described as Trinada Pi. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says we should chant humbler than a blade of grass. And Pradyumna Prabhu gave me a great example on this. The example he gave was that when you have a lawn, each blade of grass contributes to the overall effect, but no blade of grass says, "Look at me." So in the Kirtan of Lord Chaitanya, every person in the Kirtan contributes to the overall effect, and no one is saying, "Look at me." You know, Kinshana Krishna, I think most of you know him. He's a very good Kirtaniya. And he was traveling with the youth party, and they went to Sharanagati, and they met Jamuna. And he started to play a raga from Vrindavan. And Jamuna loved it. And she developed affection for him. So, she loved that. So then she came to Vrindavan, and Kinshana came in to see her. Because she loved him, she looked at him and said, "Don't become an entertainer." Because that ruins the whole thing. And that's why the Kirtan, in line from Prabhupada, I can't say it's the only line, there are other Vaishnava lines. If you're in Vrindavan, if you want to come with me to Titiyastan and see that Drupad Kirtan. Drupad Kirtan is classical. It's the most intricate classical style of Kirtan where all the sadhus and congregational people learn this and they come together to do this Kirtan. But Prabhupada taught Prema Kirtan. It's special, it's different from Kirtan in just the yoga world. It's not that there can't be some Vaishnavas or people, but it's different. It goes beyond the music. It goes beyond the music. Just like when King Prataparudra, the king, and because he was a king, Lord Chaitanya couldn't associate with him because king is Vishayi. Even if they're renounced, they must enjoy, they must have accoutrements of power to do their service because people cooperate with power and respect power. No matter what it is, whether it's a great musician or anything, they respect power. So the king must have the accoutrements of power. So Lord Chaitanya couldn't associate with the king, but the king was such a great devotee. So now he heard that 200 Bengali Vaishnavas, 200 Bengali Vaishnavas are now going to come into Puri. So he got a place, and he was with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinathacharya, his intimate devotee, and then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, this chief logician, and they're standing on the roof, and then the Bengali kirtan, and what that kirtan must have looked like. Even if you saw in Bengal, they have these professional kirtan groups. I mean, let's put it this way, their presentation, at least, and their musical ability is almost mind-blowing. And the way they're dancing, and the way they're dressed, and the way they hit the drums, and the way they sing, and the different leaders and things like that. So this kirtan group comes in, but it's 200 Bengali Vaishnavas. And they're coming in by this kirtan. But in Puri at that time, there were 1,000 kirtan groups. And these people, like, wow, they could do kirtan like you couldn't believe. Remember that the most famous kirtan guru in Vrindavan was called Kokan Baba. Guy was like, you can't, how they would do kirtan, they would like, one guy would sing and he'd do his eye, and another guy would sing, and then he'd go like this, and then three guys would sing at one. They're rotating it around, and what they would do in the alap, and it all goes around. It's like so exciting. Then someone complained. Maybe it was Namras. I can't say. I'll say him because he has such a good sense of humor. It may not have been him. If the guy gets paid, he said he should be paid. Look at the way this guy sing. Sing like that. But what happened is the kirtan came in, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, I've never heard a kirtan like that before. He's seen kirtans like that. Satyari, in that article, which I really like and I sometimes quote, he said, love for God in the heart is called bhava. Kirtan is when the bhava in the heart is expressed by discipline of music. If there's no bhava, there's no kirtan. Doesn't matter how good people are singing. It starts with the bhava. And when there's that bhava, then something very, very interesting happens, that a person's emotions becomes manifest in sound vibration. So you listen to it, you actually get to almost physically experience another person's heart. And we know that, we know who those kirtaniers are who have that bhav and how they sing. And there's not only that, but because the name is a person, and a person reveals themselves to the extent that you love them. So when somebody has real love for Krishna and is chanting the holy name, then we say they chant Shuddhanam. There's Namaparad, chanting with offense, Namabhas, it's a glimpse of the holy name, the dawn of the holy name, then there's Shuddhanam, the full sum of the holy name. But what is that Shuddhanam? When someone like that chants, then Krishna manifests fully. Krishna manifests to that person in the name. Like a person can be before you but not fully manifest, because a person is much more than his form. A person is their heart. So the holy name is there. Like if you see a person, you say, oh, the person's there. Yes, the person's there, but how much of the person is manifest? It depends on your relationship with the person. So when someone actually has a relationship with the holy name, And they're chanting the holy name in love, and then the name starts to manifest. And then you get the benefit from hearing that. So, Om Namo Bhagavate. So, what time is it, by the way? Okay. Okay, I can go a little longer. We can have some kirtan. We'll get a little into the Chaitanya Bhagavata. Right? So now back to Srivas Angam. So everything is there. In the Rasa Leela, it's Radha and Krishna and the devotees. The emotion that manifests between them, that's inspired and intensified by music and dance. And that's the highest manifestation of reality. So what is Srivas Angam? It's Radha and Krishna, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there. He's combined Radha and Krishna. It's the devotees who love Radha and Krishna, manifest through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose feelings are intensified by music and dance. But in Gaur Leela, the music and dance is something that you can emulate. In Krishna Leela, you can't. So it's more accessible. Those feelings are more accessible in Gaur Leela. And not only accessible, but we can actually participate in it. You know, one thing I love about being in Vrindavan is the sadhus that I've known there for like 40 years. And I have one godbrother, he's out in Govardhan for about 5 months, and we're actually pretty much best friends. And he's very, very deep in his personal meditations on the pastimes of Krishna. And from talking with him and being with him, I kind of understand actually how that works. And of course, the one thing you have to say that his adhikari was, and this is the adhikari, adhikari is surrendering to Guru and Krishna in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, because without that, you can't enter into Radha and Krishna, the pastimes. The basic principle of Krishna consciousness and of love is giving up selfishness, which means separate interest. You don't have a separate interest. And if you have a personal interest, it's still not separate. It's connected to some truth that's higher than yourself. And connecting with that is called bhakti. Okay, no separate interest. Well, what interest then? That's, you know, what interest is not separate? And that's the will of God. And connecting through that. And that's what it means to surrender to Guru and Krishna. And that's the foundational principle. Without that, nothing else happens. So I'm explaining this person has some depth, but it has some foundation and substance. And I really admire my godbrothers and his followers who understood this principle and really gave their life without separate interests. And a lot of these people, I see at the age of, he's my age, about they have nothing left. Physically, they have nothing left. They can't do much else. I'm going on, I was with Shivaram Swami. I was fortunate to spend some time with him. I can see his health is so weak. Why is it so weak? Because he gave himself so fully. It's maybe not the recommended process or something, but you know, you could do it in other ways. But same thing with my friend. But he was sharing some interesting realization with me. And he was saying, you know, he worships. And day he offers prayers to 200 Vaishnavas. I mean, it's all the associates of Lord Chaitanya, all the associates of Krishna, all his god brothers and god sisters. He says those who are Swajatiya in the same mind and those of Vijatiya against. What does it mean against? There's different people with different moods. They're just different moods. There's people that are more liberal, people more conservative, there's different moods. But they have the same mood. What they are, they've given to Krishna. So he made a realization. And I'd like to share this realization, to share our fortune, and make sure we understand to take advantage of our fortune. He shared a realization that he felt that these people that gave their lives to Krishna, that really gave their lives to Krishna, were inspired in that way. Then minimum they're born in Gaur Leela. And then he made the point, Gaur Leela just doesn't mean the time of Lord Chaitanya. It could be the generation after. You can be born the generation after Lord Chaitanya. There's a book about that called Jaiva Dharma, where it talks about the Vaishnavas after Lord Chaitanya. And he said, the generation, and it can be now. It can be now. This is Gaur Leela. This is definitely Gaur Leela. It's an incredibly exciting time in Gaur Leela. You know, when Prabhupada was on the shore and standing on the harbor and looking out at America and seeing what was opposed to him. It's one man and then the rest of America in passion and ignorance like he never saw before. You know, and then he thought like, well, how can I possibly be successful? And I like to say with his $5 in his pocket, the latest fashion of plastic white shoes from Louis Bazaar. Can't figure that one out to this day. Plastic shoes, white, Louis Bazaar. Cool. And then the books and how he becomes successful. And then he started to quote, because of his faith in the Bhagavatam, these verses in the Bhagavatam. Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hidyantisto Yabhadrani Vidanoti Suritzata. Shrinvata Swakata, when you chant Shrinvata Swakata Krishna, Kata Krishna, and chanting and hearing about Punya Shravana Kirtana, it's so pious. Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Hidyantisto Yabhadrani. It purifies the heart. Vidanoti Suritsatam. Why? Suritsatam, to the devotees, God is close in heart. And he appreciates when they get together and glorify him. And then he purifies the heart. Then, Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavat. Then it purifies you. So Prabhupada's looking and seeing what he's against, but then he has the faith in the Bhagavatam, and then his Leela happens. And then what my thought is, if it was Lord Chaitanya on the Jaladuta, would the pastime be any different or more exciting? Would it be any different or more exciting? I don't think it could be more exciting. Then in the 26th Avenue, where, you know, Kirtananda says we're all gopis. And then this person is like talking about high and a low level. And then Professor Hopkins says, you know, and they didn't know what they were talking about. That's what Prabhupada used to spread Krishna consciousness around the world. Amazing story. So this is also Gaur Leela. It's got all the bobs. Jubilation, disappointment, dear death, everything. Chant and be happy. So Gaur Leela is very, very special, and it's the way to enter into Krishna Leela. And in fact, the deep meditators, before they meditate on Krishna Leela, they meditate on Gaur Leela. Because if you meditate on Gaur Leela, what is Lord Chaitanya thinking about? He's thinking about the Astaka Leela Smaran. His meditation is, that's how you enter. And also it's a very special thing of serving someone. When you serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when you serve someone, you have to understand their heart and take it into your own. So when you serve Guru Parampara, when you serve the Vaishnavas, and you're really focused on that, it's a very special thing. Because their desire has to be yours. That's what the Krishna consciousness, movement is. I was listening to a lecture of Vaisheshika Prabhu in Mayapur, and he was quoting Janavi, such a nice Vaishnavi, such a special soul, and was describing her epiphany in Krishna consciousness in one sense, that she was young, she grew up in the movement, and then you have to think, really you have to start on your own. What is this about? How do I fit in here? It doesn't come automatically, and especially the Krishna consciousness movement growing 30 years ago. People, Rabindra, one time at Gita Nagari, we had one of our first retreats, and one of the issues was, the role of women in Krishna consciousness. So like always, you always have two groups. One is more Indian bent, who think that their culture is going to be destroyed. And then you have more Western people that feel like, this is completely irrelevant to the Western world, and they argue about it. And they're kind of fervent about it. And I always try to look at people that what is the legitimate side of what they're thinking. So then it's going on and on and on, and like this and like this, and the straight is like this, the Indian life members like this, and so, chant and be happy. And then Jayadvaita Swami. No, this is another one. I'll tell you what Jayadvaita Maharaj said, but it's something else that someone else said, which I'll repeat. And Jayadvaita Maharaj said, the problem with ISKCON is there's no grandmothers. There's no wisdom, young people. There's no generations of people to carry knowledge. But then Ravindra Swarup said that the problem with ISKCON growing up is that Prabhupada was the only adult. He's starting this worldwide movement. He was the only adult. So I think the point I was making about Janavi, and then she met Chamuna. And then her epiphany says, I want to be like that. And that's what Krishna consciousness is. Prabhupada said we advance by appreciation. That's why, in one sense, the most important service in Krishna consciousness is to become purified yourself. Because without that, the movement doesn't have the integrity and inspiration to really achieve its objective. Lord Chaitanya's mission was taste and distribute. This chapter, which I'm going to lecture about today, it's called The Beginning of the Sankirtan Movement. And the beginning of the Sankirtan movement, in 25 words or less. The beginning of the Sankirtan movement first, I'll really just give a really quick summary now, and then we'll have some more kirtan and then maybe prasada. In 25 words or less, the beginning of the Sankirtan movement is, first principle is I described this, I wrote an article, God's problem. So what is God's problem? It's the same problem we have. He's not a devotee. So God wants to be a devotee because the happiness of the lover is greater than the happiness of the beloved. So for God to be complete and supreme, which means the supreme enjoyer, he has to experience the love of his devotee. So the ontological conception is very beautiful. For God to be perfect, he must be three things. He must be one, he must be Advayam Gyan, he must be consciousness of which nothing is separate from. He must be two, otherwise there's not love. So he must be Radha and Krishna. So the one has to become the two, and then it has to become one again. Because for God to enjoy completely, he has to experience the love of his topmost devotee, which is Radha at the height of her love. So God comes to get that love. He doesn't have it. So the first 24 years of his life, he's not exhibiting love of Godhead. Because where is love of Godhead? It is in the heart of the devotee. So you want to get love of Godhead, you have to get it from the devotee. So his father dies, then he goes to Gaya, which is traditional, to perform pinda, oblations to the forefathers. This is a principle. If anyone passes away in your family, you should feed the Vaishnavas, prasadam, and offer that same prasadam to your ancestors. Devotee, not devotee, it doesn't matter. They will get the benefit. It's scientific. That's what we do. There they had a more ritualistic thing. He went to Puri to do this. He went to Gaya. And then he met his guru, and he surrendered. And surrendered meant what? He surrendered to the truth, manifest through this person, so that he would no longer act selfishly. He would connect with a universal interest rather than his separate interest. And that principle is the principle by which love flows and by which one experiences love. And therefore Lord Chaitanya was transformed because he surrendered fully, and therefore Krishnanu Shilanam, he's connected with the energy of God. It transforms his heart, and then he comes back. And he's overwhelmed with this love of Godhead. And if I would read this beautiful Chaitanya Bhagavat, you would see tears of love flowed from his eyes in all directions as if the Ganges had appeared. Everyone was struck with wonder and thought, we have never before seen him like this. He must have received the mercy of Krishna, or perhaps he has seen something wonderful on the way. After a short while, the Lord regained his external consciousness and began to speak to everyone present there. The Lord said, "Oh friends, please return home. I will tell you where to come so we may meet tomorrow. I wish to tell you about my miseries in a solitary place." His miseries was love, so it was actually beyond duality. It was the greatest happiness, but it was this separation from Krishna. He was beginning to feel what it's like to be a devotee. I'm separated from Krishna. Where is Krishna? Intent. So he comes, but what do you do with intense emotion? This is why psychologically sometimes people who are disconnected from both parents and therefore have intense emotion which they are disconnected with and can't identify have to become artists. They have to externalize their heart to live. Without expressing it, they can't live. It's just too intense. Emotion has to be expressed. That's why Krishna, even when he's in the forest, he's in the forest and he's with his brother and they're going through the forest and all the animals are bowing down to Krishna, but because Krishna is Madhurya, he's so sweet. And what's the sweetness? He has all good qualities, but he's humble at the same time. That's Madhurya. That's why Krishna is so sweet. Not that he just said, no, he's the most beautiful, and he's the most intelligent, he's the most famous, and he's the most renounced, and he's the most strong, and he's the most talented. But he's very humble, and he's proper, and proper people deflect praise from themselves to others. So he deflects the praise to his brother. Oh, Balaram, look, they're glorifying you. And then he looks and he said, how fortunate is the earth, for Krishna's lotus feet are touching the ground. Imagine what that's like with the earth. And how fortunate are the trees where Krishna is. In the Vrindavan, the flowers are blossoming out of love for Krishna, and Krishna picks everyone. Why? Because he's Bhagavan. So he accepts every single flower that's offered. So he said, look at the flowers, and then he says, and look at the animals, and look at the animals, and look at the animals, and look at the mountains, and they're getting his glance. But best of all is the gopis who are by your embrace. Krishna, you're talking to your brother here. Why are you talking about the gopis? You don't talk about your girlfriend in front of your older brothers. What are you doing? Why? Because what is in the heart must come to the lips. What is in the heart will come to the lips. Must come to the lips. And not only that, it must be expressed. So what is Lord Chaitanya going to do with these incredible feelings of separation? He has to express them, and that's kirtan. So he's going to bring them all together for kirtan. And every night they meet very intensely. And the point I was going to make is when a person, one day, the kirtan wasn't manifesting. And the kirtan wasn't manifesting. So he's saying, like, why isn't the kirtan manifesting? Lord Chaitanya said, it's not happening today. There is someone here who's of a different mood. We can't experience the rasa. He said, no, it's here. No, there's someone here. There's someone here. No, there's no one. No, there's someone here. There's someone here. Anybody new come today? Oh, there's one brahmachari. But he's so advanced, he just takes milk. And Lord Chaitanya said, if that's the qualification for prema bhakti, then every mother is an uttama adhikari. No, every baby is an uttama adhikari. They only take milk. But he had a different mood. It didn't happen. And that's why I think when I'm just going around a little bit, but when I was here and I'm seeing the kirtan here and how people open their hearts, I'm thinking it's nice. The whole program is some intimacy can really be there. Some people like-minded, you open your hearts, it's so nice. Kirtan. And it's Vrindavan. you know, there's one friend of mine there, he's a little bit of a sadhu. So he goes every day, and there's a famous sadhu that lectures in a place called Madanter. It's on the Prikram path, it's an old forest ashram, it's so beautiful. And one sadhu lectures there every day. And he was lecturing on Vrindavan Mahimamrita by Prakasananda, at the glories of Vrindavan. And he was lecturing. So I say, you're my friend, you go there, because the person spoke Hindi and English, you give me the notes. You give me the notes. So he sent me by WhatsApp or something the notes. So I was looking at the notes. And one thing the person said was really interesting. He said, you know, you should stay in Vrindavan and execute Krishna consciousness. He said, but if one leaves Vrindavan to spread Krishna consciousness and the person dies there, that's as good as Vrindavan. And I love that when someone who's a scholar, another line, and this guy was really from another line, gave that. So I see, and I'll make a joke now, outside of my window in Vrindavan is Titiyasthan. Not Titiyasthan, it's called it's called Radhatila. It's a place where the sadhus, they feed the birds. Like Radharani, Vrinda Devi, the goddess of Vrindavan, had 60,000 parrot disciples that would go all around Vrindavan and tell Radha, and Krishna where to meet. So Radharani would come this place and feed the birds. And at 3 o'clock, outside my room, I sit, that's my television, I got these big windows, and I look outside, and it's the birds. It's the birds. And the birds of Vrindavan come, and now that I got my hearing aid, I can hear them, which is also revelatory, and now I actually hear the birds. And so it's untouched. So you look out this window, it's Brooklyn untouched. Just a few trees and things. The original Brooklyn is there, right outside the window. You can look, it's not just the way it was 500 years ago. It's somehow never been built up. So this is how the Sankirtan mission begins. They begin chanting and communicating and creating this Vaishnav community based on singular objective of Lord Chaitanya's mission and chanting the holy name. And they do it, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it. And then some Brahmins become upset because they're afraid that this is going to upset the Chandkazi, that means the Muslim magistrate. They allow the religion, but keep it to yourself type of thing. The Brahmins complain to the Chandkazi. He comes and he breaks the Mridanga. That Mridanga is on the altar there in Srivas. And Kol Banga, something, it's there, broken Mridanga. And Lord Chaitanya, then it goes out. So that's the beginning of the Sankirtan movement. Lord Chaitanya surrenders to his guru, starts getting the devotees together in that mood of bhakti and devotion together, and in community chanting together and like-minded. It creates a force that expands. You just can't expand without that force, without that community, without that rasa, without that community of kirtan. Then it spreads. That's how Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness. So we're just talking about that about another place. If you don't do that, you can't make your plans. They're empty-headed. They're empty. They don't work. That's the force. The Vaishnav community chanting. And if you don't do that, there's not the mood of pure name. Then too much offense comes in. Doesn't create the heart and the spirit. Okay, 3:28, only 3:28 a.m. Some other time here. I was speaking with Kasturi. I'll just tell you this story. He calls me up and says, yeah, I'm going to walk to the Brooklyn Temple to take lunch with Jai. Wait to lunch. I'm not good. I have technologically challenged. So I put it in Google Maps. And I'm speaking to Kastuba, and I'm saying, hey, Kastuba, you know, it's very beautiful here. There's so many big houses. He says, sounds like Miss Mark. I said, yeah, it's him. He says, you're going the wrong way. I would have been at like, hey, what's it's like, it's like Bhagavatamrita. You know, what does the ocean do? But then I saw it gave me the wrong way. I don't know why it gave me the wrong way. I said, no, I'm going to set it again. And after, it was like, you know, when the thieves took baby Krishna for an hour and they wound up in the same place. And I walked around for another half hour and I said, wait a second. I'm still at Prospect Park. It's only 2 blocks from here. Okay. Uber. Okay. Okay, 1 or 2 questions, then we'll have maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes of kirtan. Anybody have any questions, comments? Like Shesha who says, reflections, anything you remembered in the class that struck you? Just do it.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
In one sense, it's related to what you're saying. But when we use the term prema,
What's that?
when we use the term prema,
Yeah.
does that we translate it as love?
Yeah.
But does that mean necessarily like divine love?
You know, the way terms are used, they have many meanings.
Yeah.
You know, the technical term is prema, is rasa. And rasa means, there's rati and rasa. Rati means, you know, you're awakening your relationship with Krishna. It's called prem ankur. It's the sprout of prem. And then prema is when it's like the sun rays. And the sun, prema is dense love. Sandrandana visheshatma. It's like when there's nothing in the consciousness except Krishna, and you're not even cognizant of anything outside. Prema is bhakti samadhi. But it also has like a general term too. But I mean the technical term is that. But I've heard, for example, when I got this idea of what bhakti is, the energy between 2 people, I heard someone use the term prema like that. Prema, love, is the energy between 2 people. Because it's the same thing. It's like the sunlight and the sun rays. It's laxity and density. So the technical term is density, but also it's the same thing. Even when we say shraddha, adao shraddha, it begins with faith, right? It begins with faith. The faith is the seed of prema. It's a very special thing. It's the conception that my happiness will be there when Krishna is pleased. It's the shift from the separate interest and the selfish interest. So it's there in a seed form. It says the seed of prema. So I think prema, though, I mean, a technical thing, it's a stage where it's sandrandana, it's so dense. The example of prema in the Bhagavatam is Bhishma Dev, that person who spoke on so many subjects, that person who fought in so many battles, you know, then he focused his mind on Krishna. So it's without any other distraction. Okay, anybody else have any reflections, any point? Satyahari.
Are you going to have the retreat at Pumpkin Hollow this year?
I will. I'm still trying to figure out the nature of the retreat, but we will have the retreat.
So can I send Cybele a letter and tell her to save me a spot?
What's that?
Can I send Cybele a letter or email and tell her to save me a spot?
Yeah. Tell her also to send out a save the date. It's August 15th to the 18th. So I'm just figuring out the format because the nature of the world changes. And if you don't change, you become static. So, you know, so we formed it for a particular way in a particular audience, and then the audience changes. People become deeper in Krishna consciousness. They want something more You know, so you have to really always, I mean, I think that's the way a teacher is, that's the way a preacher is. You have to always analyze the audience, who is there, how is it changing, how, like when we started it was my idea. And why did I start it? Because there was nothing going on anywhere. And Raghunath was inspiring so many people in Krishna consciousness, but kind of on the periphery. So I said to them, how are we going to bring these people deeper? There's nothing for them. There wasn't the Bhakti Center. They really didn't have that together yet. So how we need to do the next step. So it was made for the next step. Remember Mukunda came, Michael Tregno. You know, so the first time I had a japa session there at the Bhakti Immersion, I said Raghunath, I'm going to do the yoga in the morning. You think I can do a little japa in the morning? Maybe some people will come, before everything starts. Yeah, okay. And maybe I can have a Bhagavatam at the time of the yoga if anybody wants that. yeah, that's okay. So, it's so funny. So the first day I came, I didn't even use a bead bag, right? People would come and I did the japa. So the next year, I look and then, now all of a sudden, everyone has bead bags. Nikki Lopez with a bead bag, this person with a bead bag, Alexander Moga with a bead bag, this person with a bead bag. Then I thought, oh my God, what if one of the new people come? They'll be freaking out. It's Hare Krishna. I put away my bead bag. So and then it was so funny. Then I think last year or something, the Bhagavatam was so full, and hardly anybody was taking the yoga. So I joked with Raghunath. I said, you want to participate, you got to make the numbers. so things change. So we're going to have it. I just have to figure out who will come and what. But I'll do that now that I'm here. Okay, good.
Because we were having anxieties about it. We saw other people were having it. We were saying,
Okay. No, we will put it out. We'll put it out. I'll tell her to put out save the date. Yeah.
I reached out to many people here, but I just wanted to invite people on Sunday to our home in New Jersey. We're having a program with Dr. Maharaj, and if anyone would like to come, just see me after the program.
Tomorrow?
Sunday from starts at 11 in New Jersey. So.
Oh my God! I only have one class. What am I going to do? Is that the same people? No.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, and then we'll have kirtan, then we'll have prasad.
Are you particularly? I'm interested very much. I'm interested in everything you say, but because I work with children, and you mentioned that the autistic tendency is because the child feels disconnected from both of the parents. Where can I read about it?
It's not the only way an artist
Yes,
is
but that's
performed.
very interesting theory I'm hearing for the first time because it's very on the rise right now, and everybody having
Yeah,
their
you'll
solutions.
find that there'll be more people like that. I'm not talking about artists. That's all they can do. They have to create. They have to do it. It's just the emotions are just so churning, and it's a disconnect from them. That you have to express them to live. You have to bring them out, put them out. It's one type of personality.
But are they talking about it as a scientific approach right now, or is it somewhere in the
It's some psychology book
Okay.
I read about different people in relationship with the parents and what happens. And if people are
artistic.
What?
Artistic.
You're talking artistic. I think she's-
artistic or autistic?
I'm talking
Artistic.
I'm talking artistic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought autistic. Autistic, yes, it's my pronunciation.
Is it my accent?
That's my hearing.
I have hearing aids now, and I can actually hear now what I sound like. And I sound I pronounce
Well,
it like
people
that.
figured it out.
No, no. autistic
Okay,
is
okay.
something else.
Okay, yeah, 'cause
You know,
that's why I
one-
got confused.
One
because I've
thing
never
that
heard of it.
they actually are linking to autism, Ayurvedic doctors, is flu shots for mothers. That it can affect the brain of the child, actually. So there's different things, but definitely there's some cause why there's an increase of autism. But autism, and I read this, is when someone doesn't have the ability to read minds. Your brain is affected in the way that you can't read minds. And if you see an autistic person, they'll come into an environment and they'll be so socially awkward. Like I may be giving a class, and if there's an autistic child, you know, a regular child will look around and figure out, not just see people, but there's a class going on and someone's speaking and everybody's serious and I better be, you know. But someone who's autistic, they won't even notice. They'll just walk by and they won't be able to read people's minds. And so there's a kind of mental thing, and you're trying to figure it out in the world. Why there's so much cancer, why there's so much autism, what is the cause, and you know, so many diseases of these kind. But that's and it's pretty difficult when you have an autistic child. You know, it's I remember someone brought one of their children to my class in Yoga Maya who was autistic, and you know, they couldn't figure it out. What is there? You know, the mother, you know, had to be really tolerant, understanding what the mother is going through.
As did you.
What?
As did you.
Yeah, because I'm not autistic. Otherwise, I would have just, you know, that nothing is going on. You know, something going on here. I didn't notice anything. Okay, Kramer, let's do 15 minutes of kirtan, and then we'll have prasadam. atmosphere, right, to have programs, and it seems that Krishna has given Rati Krishna and Kaveri this space for these type of programs. So I think we'll try to do something regular here. I know. I also want to do occasionally. I thought of a Sunday morning program called Rasa Japa. I have an idea where chanting japa, but beginning by creating the mood by Krishna Lila and by some bhajan that we can learn, just absorption. So we have some idea just occasionally. So it's just a nice place, huh? It's almost made for the program. Right? Where you see like the living room and then the space and then the side space where the men could go and talk in the corner. Right? Behind the wall. We can even buy a room. So those kind of program. We'll let you know. Okay, and how many people actually live in Brooklyn? Okay.
Come on.
It's not that.
So this huge train right here and takes me right to my house. So.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
I took the cube.
it's not like Manhattan. It's like such a trek, I mean. But
Oh goodness.
okay. So now prasad will be served. Is this a good time for programs occasionally, like Friday night? And 6 o'clock is good, right?
Yes.
Okay. Jenny, you approve?
Yes.
Right, nice just to walk back.
Yeah, I
home.
walk here.
That's great, right? Krishna's making plans for you.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay. Rati, what's the people come up and get it? How do
No, everybody can just kind of sit around. We'll bring out plates and
Oh, sir, okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, leave that.